YouTube? This is Hunter Surge, and it's Banlist. It's Banlist time. I'm a bit late on this, but that's fine. That's fine. I've got to keep myself to my schedule so that I don't stress myself out with doing content. It's very important. It's very important. That's what I've learned. That's what I've learned over the years. I've never actually gotten to cover a ban list as a content creator because, like, but if I didn't have any ban lists until what, like halfway through X? No, it was like during Ace, like 4 or 5 years in, and I wasn't very active as a content creator by the time that actually happened. Bakugan never had a ban list. Could have used one, but never got one. And I was never active enough as a Vanguard or Digimon creator to cover any ban list stuff that happened there. So this is really my first time, and I'm kind of excited about it. But I'm not necessarily excited for it about the ban list part. There's just like some stuff that I want to talk about that this ban list serves as a good jumping off point for. So let's go over it real quick. Tartarus ban. This makes me super happy because, like, one of the most irritating things with the ban list philosophies of some other games is that they will judge exclusively on data, and like if something is super toxic, no one likes playing against it, they'll still just leave it in the format, even though it's awful for the game, creates nothing but bad play experiences because it's not actually topping a bunch, it's not topping enough. And like I'm very happy to see them go, yeah, we're just gonna instantly get rid of this. It didn't even top its first event. Who cares? Get rid of it. It's gone. Very happy about that. Tartarus Escape from Tartarus doesn't look so good right now. I think some work needs to be done on this Escape from Tartarus card. So Escape from Tartarus Tartarus. You discard the Ambrosia and you draw 2. For the Ambrosia or the Golden Apple of Discord, you discard it. And like that isn't the worst thing in the world, but like you need to justify running this stat line when stuff like Astrabbit exists, of course. And I don't think a ditch to draw 2 is quite there, especially when like Tartarus is like Astrabbit, not an offensive presence, but has strictly worse stats. So like I feel like something needs to be done to change this, but also I feel like you could have just like kept the old effect and made it a once per turn. I feel like that would have completely resolved the issue anyways. But whatever, it's fine. I have no doubt that this will see some more work because the other thing to talk about here is that they stealth dropped an update to Sparkitt's Escape from Tartarus version. So the last time we saw this, when Sparkitt was banned, it was a 3-1 that you could nexus up to 2 Thunderers, and when you did, you discarded a random card from your opponent's hand. So the Sparkitt we're seeing now is basically completely revamped. We don't have like a complete shot of it, so like we can't see its defense stat, but like we can make out pretty clearly what like the missing words of its effects are based on what the other words are. So what we're looking at is it is now a 4 attack stat like original Sparkitt, back up from the 3 attack we saw in the original Escape from Tartarus. But most importantly, the discard is no longer tied to the Nexus. It just has like a Nexus effect on its own. It can just do that. But the discard effect is instead, when you cast this Sparkitt, your opponent reveals 2 random cards from their hand and you pick one of them to discard. So very clearly, at some point in testing, they went, this thing that Sparkitt can sometimes set up where like you're just looping like 1 or 2 cards out of your opponent's hand every single turn, and you're just keeping board control and not letting them break this board setup you have. It's like very toxic and very unfun, and we don't want that existing in any capacity. So Sparkitt is now going to be an on cast. You will get to discard once, but the discard will be a bit more powerful than just a random discard in exchange for that. Which I think that's probably a good choice. I am not an enjoyer of hand rip strategies. So like I was actually kind of a bit concerned about the fact that Sparkitt was going to maintain its ability to set up those board states where you just constantly rip cards out of your opponent's hand. So I'm glad that is no longer appearing to be in the Escape from Tartarus version. So like we will probably see modifications to this Tartaria before it sees release, and hopefully it gets better because I don't think the version we're seeing right now is super playable. I really don't think it's there. If it was like a 3.5, maybe. But yeah. Okay, so moving on from that, the real juice is the limits. So we are limiting to 1 Lavalith, Earthquake, and Laurels. Now, I think hitting the critical mass of removal in some form is important. But I share some concerns that I've seen expressed by a few other people. That Earthquake might be a bit too important to the core design of Elestrals, and I'm a bit worried about what might happen with it gone, because the replacement hard removal cards that are splashable are PTA, which is timing specific, and Boombat, which can be disrupted by Gorgon's Gaze and Dense Fog, and also eats your normal cast. So I'm a bit concerned about what might happen because I really feel that the Ascensions in this game are really balanced around hard removal, again, around this targeted removal that can just get rid of them, which I'll be honest does not feel great. It definitely does not feel like good old buddy fights design where like, oh, the big guys are big, but like you have link attack, so you're always going to be able to muster up a way to deal with them by combat. And also they have Soul Guard, so we can just print a bunch of hard removal, and like that won't immediately invalidate these things because they're going to have multiple lives. Does not feel like that. The design of the big guys doesn't feel quite satisfying. Doesn't flow together into a satisfying game. It's like, oh, they suck the big guy. Well, I can't really beat over this by combat. I don't really have any means of doing that. So unless I get out a big guy of my own, so I guess I've just gotta dig for hard removal. And now there's less hard removal, so that might be a bit of a problem. But I could also just push the meta towards archetypes that have some form of in-archetype removal to shore up the ones that we've lost. Stuff like Fire Nexus, stuff like Race to the Top, Rhino Sect Gaming, To the Moon, and Kerbis, which is also bypasses targeting protection, just like the Rhino Sect play does. So if that ends up being what happens, then I think that this Banlist will have 100% done what intended, and the amount of removal that people have access to will be approximately the same. Gonna see a lot more Boombat though. Definitely gonna see a lot more Boombat. And we were already seeing quite a bit of it. Lavalith to 1 and Laurels to 1. So like comeback cards are important, but these comeback cards did not feel good in combination with how divines work and how the cool, interesting ideas that you would want to explore in this game. It's cool, unique mechanics. Like that was always kind of lame, and I was not a huge fan of that. So I'm kind of glad about this, but the problem is, this is always the problem with limiting to 1, is, oh, now we've got Saki 1-ofs. And, oh, cool, they saw the 1 Lavalith. Awesome, they just drew it. Oh, cool, they just drew the 1 of Laurels. That's great, man. Laurels is the one that's going to feel the worst, because Laurels is the one that everyone is going to put in their deck, because they don't have any spirit considerations for running Laurels. With Earthquake and with Lavalith, there are spirit considerations that will probably make a bunch of people go, is this really worth the 2 spirits? But I think ultimately, like at least with Earthquake, maybe a bit less so with Lavalith, but it's still also really powerful. That ultimately people are going to decide. I could fit 4 Earth spirits for Earthquake before. I can fit 2 for 1 copy now. It's fine. Because like the 1 of is just going to be that powerful. On Lavalith specifically, though, last video, I was talking about the new reveals, and I was talking about Gloombat. And my opinion on Gloombat actually goes up significantly because of Lavalith's hit to 1. Because, like, one of the use cases of Gloombat is that it's an easily accessible way of countering Divine Rune strategies. because you can just spend your normal cast to get rid of a Divine Rune. And it has other use cases, so it's a bit more versatile than that. But Lavalith was just a way better card at dealing with that scenario. But now Lavalith is at 1 and is not super reliable, so I think Gloombat becomes much more appealing as a sideboard option once it comes out, because of Lavalith only being at 1. Because now it's now the thing that you can run at 3 copies. It's in a spirit that like there's other good sideboard cards that you could be running, or even stuff in your main if you're running like Spectaris. And yeah, it just lines up a lot better for sideboards now, I feel, than it did when Lavalith was a 3. So that's that. I find that interesting. I really don't like the Saki 1-ofs. I'm really not a fan of that. I'm not a huge fan of that. And like now I get to Springboard. So like for the whole like week or so after A Drive started mentioning on Twitter that he was thinking about doing limits, I've been harping on this constantly everywhere where Elestrals is talked about. I think the game should be employing some kind of choice restriction. So, what is a choice restriction if you are only familiar with, say, the big 3? Because none of the big 3, outside of like the Duel Links Banlist, is the closest thing to this, utilize a choice restriction system. So there are a few different ways that you can do a choice restriction, but typically it all comes down to you're not banning these cards, but you are putting a restriction on what cards can be played together. So the most common one that I feel like people who play a lot of card games will be most familiar with is the one that is used by a lot of Bushiroad games and a lot of Bandai games. That is a choice restriction where you have these 2 groups of cards, and they go, if you have a card from Group A in your deck, you cannot have any of the cards from Group B in your deck. Often this will be like just one card in Group A and one card in Group B. But like Digimon has a choice restriction where it's like there's 1 card in Group A and then 3 cards in Group B, and stuff like that. There's also, of course, the Duel Links Banlist system, which is, okay, we have this list of cards which are on the limited 1 list. You can only use 1 of those cards. We have this list of cards on the limit 2 list. You can only use 2 of those cards in total. And you have this list of cards on the limit 3 list. You can have 3 of these cards in total. However, my actual favorite is the super old Hall of Fame system that the Pokemon TCG used before they started rotating in Japan. Because I think this system is the most flexible one. So basically how it worked is your deck was allotted 4 points that you could use. Unrestricted cards were 0 points. And then the cards that they wanted to restrict the use of would be allotted point values of 1, 2, 3, or 4. And you could assign your 4 points for your deck however you wanted. I like these systems a lot. I think they create for a lot more interesting deck building when done well. And they allow you to take away cards from a powerful tier 1 strategy while allowing lower tier decks to maintain access. It's also really good at dealing with problems caused by having critical mass of a kind of card, like critical mass of hard removal, or say, if we needed to deal with healers or 5s again, critical mass of cards that on play heal, or critical mass of cards that have 5 in their stat and are 1 cost. It's very good at dealing with those. And honestly, like when I look at this list, I see these limits as like these are primarily about reducing the amount of hard removal decks have access to. That is what it seems to be primarily about. Lavalith is kind of an exception to that, but I think if we had a choice restriction of these 3 cards, you could pick 1 to play, and you could play 3 copies of it, but you couldn't run any of the other 2. I think Lavalith, like even if Lavalith does discourage Divine Rune strategies, I think Lavalith being only able to be run if you gave up completely on Earthquake and Laurels is such a big trade-off that you'd end up with a very similar result anyways. And it would create a lot more interesting deck building. And it means that, say, the concerns with Earthquake being gone wouldn't really exist, because you could still run 3 Earthquake. You would be 100% able to do that. And you add the Spirit considerations into that. It's like, I could use this slot on the Earthquake. However, if I go with the Laurels instead of the Earthquake, I don't have to do anything funky with my Spirit math. Stuff like that. I think that would be really interesting, make for a lot of really cool deck building, and it would completely remove the Saki 1-of problem that the current list is inevitably going to have. And that Saki 1-of problem does not feel great, and I really feel that a choice restriction of some form would have solved the problem that they're aiming to solve without introducing Saki 1-ofs, without introducing those really feels bad moments where your opponent just top decks a 1-of that's been limited to 1. Like, I think that would have been worked a lot better. And like, I would hope, I don't know if this video will reach the team, but if it does, I hope that you will consider choice restrictions in the future, because I think they are overall, out of some very specific scenarios, I think they are typically better for a game than limit to 1s. And that's going to be it for this video. I really wanted to find an opportunity to talk about choice restrictions and why I think they're a lot better than limits in a video. And thank you for the Banlist for giving me the perfect opportunity to do so. Well, that's going to be it for me for today. So this is Hunter Surge, signing off.